Hello and welcome to another episode of Game Dev Weekly. This week I'm not going to be working on Hydroneer like my regular scheduling. Instead, this week I'm going to be doing some freelance work for an indie studio called Strange Game Studios. I'll be retexturing assets for their current PlayStation VR title, Honor and Duty D-Day. You can find all their links below as well as links to my current project. I'll be showing you a bit behind the scenes of my thought processes while I work on these models. There's about 100 models for this job and I'll be showing you some of my favorites. So I'm going to start off by going over some materials that I've previously created. What we've got here is kind of like an extension of a house, I guess. And I'm just going to be testing some of my materials and reiterating over them, as well as adding new ones to my material library. So first up, we've got a brass material here. I quite like this material so far. I've done a bit of work on it. The scratches in the brass are quite shiny while the surface is quite dull. And this is just kind of observations I've made while looking up references for brass. If I move the lighting around, you can get a better look at it. As I don't have the client's game environment to hand, I can't test it inside their level with their lighting that they've got, but I can only go off of this scene. I can also change the environment in this scene, but I quite like this one. One thing I'm going to do on all of these models is add a layer of ambient occlusion on top, and that kind of makes it a bit darker and gritty. You can see here it's especially kind of in the cracks of the roof and also in this door here. So let's just show you a few more of the materials that we've got, like a worn metal, which is quite nice. I like this for metal that's been a bit worn. The next one is this wood color, really nice. It's got some nice thin grain to it. So with this wood, I really wanted it to fit in the theme of gritty World War II style. I also got a light variant of that wood as well, you know, same kind of thing. I've also got a nice rock material here that I've made. It's going to work quite nice for things like boulders, and it can also work quite well for any kind of like masonry walls, anything made out of stone. Here is a really nice example of some of these processing effects that I've added. So here we've got a destroyed house. All the textures are actually finished on it, and I want to show you what it looks like before I actually put any of these processes on top. So right now it's kind of got the base colors. The way that I envision this is what do the materials look like before they're actually destroyed. So first off, I got some ambient occlusion, and that's just going to darken everything. It's going to just sit right in the crevasses of all the bits of geometry and make it a bit more gritty. So it's a very subtle effect. You can mainly notice it down kind of here at the bottom, and also some shading down here just underneath this fallen bit of roof. So this does a good job, but it doesn't exactly go the entire way that I want with this model. So what I've actually added is this kind of ashy, burnt out wood feel. It goes across the entire model. It sits on the concrete walls and kind of also makes the wood look like it's burnt out. And so this is a smart material that I've made. We can also change some of the variables depending on how burnt out you want something to look. So this is the way that I'm going to send it to the client, and maybe if he asks for it to be a bit more burnt out, then I can do that quite easily. So this is one of the stone walls in my game in Hydroneer, and if I just disable this, you can actually see the difference between my wall and the one for this client. They use relatively similar materials, and the processes to actually get the materials to look like this use the same kind of thing with this edge wear here and mold sitting in the gaps, but they kind of go about it in two different ways. So today I'm starting off with a really interesting model. This model is a flat cannon, a German World War II one, and it's pretty interesting. It's got some nice shapes to it. I think it'll be really fun to actually paint it. Something that I'm thinking about is all these handles and turning wheels. Thinking about using maybe like wood on the handles and plastic on the actual wheels. Here I've got some reference images. I think this is probably like from a museum. You can see here's a bit of wood on the seat, as well as the dials of black inside. But the actual base of the model is just this kind of like blue metallic color. Here's the same one from a different angle. Yeah, there's not much color variation on here, so I think I'm going to be really careful with detail. Something that I was thinking about is having the teeth on this cog be this kind of scratched metal to actually look like it's worn down. So this is what I finished up with. I'm pretty happy with how it's going. It's a really hard thing to texture just because of how basic the colors are. It is literally just this bluey metal color with just a little bit of detail here. It also doesn't really help that the model is actually quite low poly and misses some of the original detail that's actually on the flat cannon. I've added in this greasy kind of darkness right here, as well as kind of in these gaps over here. Right here you can kind of see there's a bit of shine to this. If I just rotate the light, you can see it a bit better. There's some shine shine in this cog right here, and that's because, as far as I know, that this actually rotates on this cog to go up and down, as well as kind of rotating around this base right here to go left and right. The last model I'm going to show you is this American battle tank. There's a lot of variation in this model, even though it's just all green. You know, there's some nice little highlighting details, like these little lights kind of being darkened out, as well as these tools on the back that look really cool. I'm pretty happy with how the tank tracks came out as well. This is a procedural texture to give it that tank track aesthetic. The geometry of the model gave me these really nice opportunities to put in these kind of dents. There's one here and one over here. Basically, there's just been a cutout of the model so I could retexture it with this shiny metal that's underneath the paint. So that's going to do it for this week's episode of Game Dev Weekly. Next week I'll be back working on Hydroneer as usual. This is just a week that I've taken off to raise some more funds, because obviously making a game can be kind of expensive. Speaking of raising funds, if you want to support me, check out my Patreon. A big thank you to all the patrons that are already supporting. A new update of Hydroneer has been out for about a week now, the 0.6 update. I hope everyone's been enjoying it, and hopefully I'll be able to get 0.7 out to everyone in another couple weeks. Thanks for watching, I'll see you next week.